Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who continues to play a different game from me this series.
Tim Longo. Definitely.
At this point, I don't even know how to introduce us because
yeah, right.
We're not sharing any specific experience.
Yeah.
So it's, if I quote something, you'll be like, "What's that about?"
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you could mention general things about the land or something, right? And well, I guess not even the factions, because some of them I'd hardly even interacted with. Yeah, it's true. I mean, eventually, if we both end up trying to finish the main story, we both will interact with the Neverine or whatever. Nerevarine prophecy, right? I assume, because we're probably both the Nerevarine.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
we'll see if we.
I was first, because I've actually advanced a little on that storyline, and you have not.
It's the Zelda model where we're both Link. It's just different versions of us in different times. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So maybe we should just sort of talk about first. So last week I had played, I believe, 26 hours. By recording time last week, and you are currently sitting at 20.
Oh, geez. Wow. Okay.
So by last week, I had already played more than you had played.
Yeah, which is not, that's usually what happens, but...
Yeah, that's not unusual. However, what is unusual is that just this week, I played more than you have played total.
Oh, no.
I played 22 hours this week.
Oh, no. Wow.
So I'm sitting at 48 hours of Morrowind.
This is like a Chocobo heaven situation happening.
Chocobo Paradise, please. No, so what's happened is I've started there was one thing I missed in the interface, which is that if you scroll down, underneath your skills and stuff like that, which, by the way, you can also rearrange those windows however you like. There's a little window manager in there.
Yeah.
Just in case you want to resize all those windows.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time I would like the map to be this big, but I can't put the guy next to it and see everything. I ended up with a very wide inventory at the bottom, and then, another third of the screen is the map, and then the other two things are kind of small. But if you drag that all the way down, it shows what faction stuff you're doing, what factions you're in, what things you've joined. And if you click or maybe mouse over them, I can't remember which, it will tell you what their main skills are.
Oh.
And what your next level up with them, advancement with them, requires from your skills.
Oh.
Because I
is it
go
skills?
Into the Mages,
or is it...
It's skills. No, it's skills.
Because I seem to be... Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Well, you're probably doing all the things that they want you to do because you are an assassin. That's your build. So you're probably doing those things, and you're just kind of naturally advancing.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe I didn't. Yeah, okay.
Whereas a battle mage, I was actually just pure battle, very little mage for a long time because of this Magicka thing. But now I've, figured that out. Although I did have to look that up because I was I need to find where to buy stuff because the chests weren't replenishing. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But I'm a member of, I believe, 5 separate faction line quests. Mage's Guild, the Fighter Guild, the Blades. I believe I've joined the Temple and the Imperial Legion. I know I've done the Imperial Legion. I can't remember if I'm in the Temple or not. I think I've started, but I haven't done anything for it yet. So I did a whole bunch of Imperial Legion stuff this week because they give you better armor than I had, and heavy armor is one of my things. So, why not? So I did a ton of stuff for them because it was all I was leveled up beyond that. I'm also level 23.
Oh, geez. Are you serious?
Yeah.
So I heard, by the way, just so, I don't know if I should tell you this or not. I did, when I was looking for, I forget how I found this. I don't remember. I think I was just looking up level cap for the game because I didn't really understand how leveling was going to work. If there was a level cap, and inadvertently I found out that the main quest apparently is balanced for around level 20.
Okay.
So FYI.
Yeah, I did find this dungeon that I went into was not terribly difficult, but it was largely because of my gear at this point. Like I have a couple of swords that are just like I've been working on my long blades lately, and I had a couple of swords that are just like nuts, you know.
Working
just like,
on your long blades.
Yeah, you got to, you know, I've got this thing called the faux
hammer,
and it's not the faux hammer, but it's faux something. It's a two-handed blade, and it's a killer. And then my backup is this one-handed fiend, because I've also been working on my block. You know, you got to get that block up for something else. Don't know, can't remember.
I thought blocks were just for shields. You can use them with two-handed weapons. Oh, okay.
No. I mean, I have a one-handed.
Oh, you
sword
go to
as
sword
well.
and board then.
Yeah, I go to sword and shield at that point. With that other one. And then I always haven't, you know, well, now I have a really good axe. I had just kind of a regular steel battle axe for a long time. Then I finally found a pretty decent axe. So now it's like, if I go to my axe, it's just like, oh, this is just because I need to mow through things because they're actually pretty tough and they're actually damaging me. So there's a lot of cases where I'm just going up and it's just taking me forever to kill something because my blades are not high enough.
Right.
So there's a lot of that goes on where we just kind of wave weapons at each other for a while, and then eventually I get tired and I just take out my axe and take them out. Yeah, so it's a whole thing. I've leveled up quite a lot with the Mages Guild, the Imperial Legion, and the Fighters Guild. I finally did massacre everybody in that Kamana Tong building in Balmora. I found that if you basically kill one, it's very funny. If you kill one and then leave, and then pay your fine, and you go back in there, all the other ones are just like, oh, I guess, you know, oh, you're here, you know. I mean, they don't like you, but they don't attack you. Whenever you pay your fine, things stop attacking you. There's a lot of weird systemic stuff like that in this game. I discovered that the Fog of War on the local map does not uncover at night. If you're walking around, your local map does not uncover.
What? On purpose?
It's got to be, like, you know, this is not a game that went without patches, but it's simulating the fact that it's night, and therefore you're not getting to know your surroundings.
That's ridiculous.
I mean,
that might explain some things then on my last session.
Yeah, you go places and you're like, why? You know, I was walking around, I'm like, why can't I? Yeah. Like, I go look at the map. I'm trying to see where the little squares are in the local map for trying to find a particular person. Yeah. Because again, the quests often are like, you know, it doesn't. I went and killed all these, or I thought I had gone and killed all these orcs in the right place. I actually killed a bunch of different orcs. It turned out.
Oh no!
Because
you're an orc.
Well, you know, Fighters Guild was like, you know, some orcs have been pestering some plantation somewhere.
Orcs are people too.
Sure, and go talk to that person, and you know, and they'll tell you what you need to do. And of course I went and I was like, I thought I talked to that person, but I guess I talked to somebody else nearby. So then I went and killed all these orcs that I had found in this, what I thought was a Daedric ruin, but was apparently something else. And I went back to the Fighters Guild and they're like, you haven't done it. I'm like, oh, is this a case where I got to go talk to the actual guy? Went and talked to the actual guy, and he's like, oh, you need to go to this place, and it's a different place. I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, it was like that, you know, there's been a lot of that as well, of just like, you really do need to talk to the people. Like, you can't just skip ahead to the killing everybody.
Yeah. The usability of it is very specific. Yeah, for sure. And what triggers what. I mean, it's
there was another guy who was called almost the same thing.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, and it was like, okay,
same thing with locations too. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Like they're very similar and
Yeah, this one's Neufchâtel and this one's cream cheese. How am I supposed to know?
Well, in that case, I mean, the names are very different, but the tastes are not. Maybe. So. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you're in deep. So let me ask you a question that you're uniquely qualified for between the two of us, but also even more uniquely qualified because of your past. Like how would you describe this game being different from like Oblivion and Skyrim? Like what is it about this game? Because it is, we've talked about it on previous episodes, like it's kind of seen as the sort of cult favorite of the series, but I have no idea really. Kind of, I can guess by playing this game, but what, like,
it's for me, there's two things. One is the setting is definitely wilder.
Yeah.
The setting is just, the
Tolkien.
world is inherently stranger, right? It's these giant mushrooms, these bugs you ride around in, even though you don't really see that. You do see like younger versions of them floating around and stuff. So you do get the sense that they're part of the environment.
This doesn't feel like Tolkien at all,
Exactly. Yeah. That's a big part of it. I mean, the races, yes, but other than that, no. And all the, I think just the weird towns and the weird, everything feels placed and things like that in the later games. In fact, they get a lot better at certain things like level design. But there's that. I mean, I think that Oblivion, especially, and then to a certain degree, Skyrim are just definitely more vanilla, right? They're more appealing to a wider audience, I should say, because this, I think, is a sort of thing where you're like giant mushrooms and like, whatever, walking around and there's a sandstorm and like, I mean, all of these things are off-putting, I think, to people who saw the Lord of the Rings movies are like, I want that, right? So there's that. And then I think the other thing is that there is all that friction in the quests. There are no markers. The map markers are very thin. There's no like if you need to know how to go to some place, you literally have to read and maybe look up in your journal, where did they say that was? And there's all of that too. Like, it's a game that you probably take notes. Yeah. I mean, you probably take notes. I mean, it's definitely a different style. It's to different tastes. This is definitely more old school in terms of that sort of thing. I mean, when we play D&D, you're more likely to have this experience in a way, right? I mean, a lot of DMs, myself included, will kind of just guide you to the place you wanted to go, right? Because you're doing a lot of theater of the mind. And it's just like, oh yeah, and maybe you have a guide or whatever, but there are things that are kind of taking you in the right direction, and you kind of hand wave the actual navigation of space. And here, of course, the navigation of space is literal, but they're still doing sort of what the DM would do and sort of describing the world to you as somebody would describe it to you, and not give you support in world. Like, so a DM is actually pointing you in the right direction and saying they said to go north when you ask, and and doing those sorts of things. Whereas here it's like you ask an NPC, they tell you where to go. Did you take note of that? The journal's there to refer to. So in a lot of cases, you can get that information, although you might have to remember what the keywords are, which is more friction. So there's just a lot of like grist, that chewing through.
Yeah. And I mean, how do I put it? When a game, especially a series like this or a franchise becomes more usable over time with sequels, modern sequels that keep being successful, you do lose. I mean, I think maybe we even brought this up in this series already, but we talked about it in WoW's case, right? WoW Classic,
for sure.
Where it's sort of like, you want it to get more usable because, of course, Skyrim's success is an example of like, if you really double down in making something that's broader, it really can do well. But in that process, you're going to inevitably lose something. There's a sacrifice to be made to do that, right? Both because the lack of usability brings sort of like different accomplishment, because it's like, oh, I found this thing that was actually really hard to find, and I solved this mystery that was actually not really that clearly laid out to me, or you accidentally found something that wasn't, because this doesn't have like a compass where you're actually just being sort of told, oh, there's something nearby, you should go check it out, or a question mark even, right? It's like and I'll, when I kind of go through my session which was pretty weird of a session. Like I scoured this one whole area because I couldn't find this thing, but in that process I found all these other things that I wasn't looking for, so it's like very true, like very pure open world design where it's very much like you don't know what's out there. Good luck, and you could run into anything, and that's just not modern anymore. But
the thing I would liken this to is a lot of the sort of janky. I think people call them literally Eurojank games, which are just games that kind of harken back to this kind of time. And I don't play a lot of these games, so if I get names wrong or anything like that, audience, please forgive me. But I seem to think Mountain Blade was one of those, right?
Yep.
That was like a game that people were like, this has interesting, like a lot of systemic stuff and friction, that we liked, right? And of course, that's not a game that sold, double-digit millions of copies, right? It's definitely a niche audience, and you kind of have to scale your game appropriately. I mean, that's part of the reason why the jank is there. There's also a lot of just weird, in this game, physics stuff. There was one dungeon I went into where I had to climb, kind of spiral up and up through the dungeon. I didn't even realize it, at first. And then eventually I was like, oh, I came out a door. I was like, oh my God, there's another path here. I thought it went down. It actually goes up. And but there are places where it's like to get through a space is like, just like maybe if I move slow, maybe if I jump, maybe what if I take it from this angle? Like, I mean, it's like, I just need to go 10 feet in that direction upwards. How do I do that? Is a thing that happens at times too, which is just, that sort of thing is not something we would allow anymore. So,
well,
I'm sure it still happens in Bethesda games to some degree, but they're a lot more polished from a just pure getting around standpoint.
Iteration. I mean, but there's something. Yeah, I mean, it's a different moment for a player when. I guess it just boils down to being led by the nose kind of motif, right? It's like there's just a different thing to where you have happened upon. Like in the process of trying to find this one mark that I was trying to kill, as is my life now with this game, I found a whole community of vampires. In this dungeon, and I hadn't had that happen yet. I'm sure there's more of them, but it was just like it felt like a discovery of my own versus anyone, nobody even told me to go there, right? So it sort of like unlocks this whole thing, and then I wonder what it's all about, and there wasn't a question mark on the map for that, I just kind of was looking through the world and saw a path, and then saw a door, and then one thing led to another. So it's that's just, you don't get that very much anymore.
No,
I'm wondering how actually
one of the things that's good about. I think that still exists in the later games, especially the way I tended to play them, which was just not caring about any of the quest lines and just kind of running around and finding points of interest. You'll still have those moments, but you are guided to the actual points of interest, and so you'll know, like, oh, there's a town near here.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Fallout 3,
and Fallout 3 is my touch point there of just like there's you can still see the little tick marks on the. On the radar or on the
so more people will find the town of cannibals or whatever, because there's a tick mark for it, and you get near it and you're like, oh, cool. And there's even an achievement, I think, in that game for like uncovering all the map markers. So it's they definitely lead and reinforce those sorts of things. I would have no idea if I had found all the stuff in Morrowind. I don't think it's possible to know, right? I mean, most things don't get put on the map. There's a lot of cases where I'm like, oh, I think I've seen that place. And then I'm like, yeah, I definitely didn't mark it on the map. So I guess I'm reading this journal entry every time I need to make a turn to figure out where I'm going. So
I definitely use markers on the map, right, more than any other game I would normally use. It's similar to Underworld or something, Ultima Underworld, right? Where you kind of need to do that. But I mean, I think it's a good example of, I feel like for me, it's a good example of a game that you know, especially with Skyrim's success, I could see people like saying to themselves, man, I wish they would remake Morrowind, but in a modern Skyrim and, you know, engine with all the trappings. But I think if you were to do that, it would not be Morrowind anymore. You know,
Well, I mean, funny you should say that, because I believe Skywind, which is the Morrowind to Skywind thing.
Yeah, I've heard that is
getting pretty close, I gather. I haven't.
Well,
I should check the news.
It'll be interesting to see if they have discipline then to not overdo it. You know what I mean? Like, how do you retain some of that spirit of what Morrowind actually is versus just modernizing everything?
Yeah. There's actually an update on Screen Rant this I don't know, a couple weeks ago. So that must be what kind of popped up in my news feeds or whatever about it. I was like, huh, why is this? I don't know. For all I know, Steam and Google are talking now. But yeah, they are trying to bring that stuff forward. But I mean, the thing is that people also just mod these things, right, as well. And that's always been a thing. You know, of course, that's a huge mod, but they could also mod out all the UI stuff if they wanted, right? They could take out things, you know, and not make
that's
it
what
like,
I mean. That's
modern games, if they wanted to. So they could try to be that faithful.
Like if Skywind has a compass with, you know, or some with some or question marks on the map or whatever, then I think that would be the wrong direction. Yeah.
I'm really curious. So yeah, it's been wild because I've seen a lot of stuff this past, you know, in the last 10 hours or so of play. I've started seeing creatures. I was sent after I believe it's called a hunger. It's this creature it's one of the loading screens, actually. It has a really long tongue. It spits at you and will pull you towards it.
Yeah.
That's a neat thing. And then I ran into some kind of Daedra called like a gold saint that was really quite tough. Was in all this golden armor, none of which dropped on its body. I was very upset. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And then I got just like a Daedra heart or something. So I've been fighting more things like that. I'm definitely getting to the point where it's like there's not a lot that I'm worried about in the game anymore. So now the exploration comes to the fore a little bit more, and I can kind of just go do the tasks. The thing I'm worried about is like, how am I gonna? You can only, I think, level skills to level 59 by trainers. That's what I've discovered. So I went to get my alteration up, and you know, he got up to level 59 and I needed to get to 60. He was like, I've taught you all I can. I'm like, oh no.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
So you can't just like buy your way through advancement everywhere either. So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff like that is like, you know, sure, you could get a lot of money and get yourself, but that money will only get you so far. At a certain point, you got to do the work. So also cool. So
what's some of your I mean, it's going to be impossible to avoid spoilers, I think, to some degree for me, but and stuff I might not even see. But what are some of your top couple moments in that last 22 hours?
I had a great crazy moment where I was trying to go to a specific place and I got off the road. Somehow I made a wrong turn somewhere and it ended up going, I was like, oh, I must have to follow these bridges. Of course, I didn't read the signposts. I just kind of looked at the world and I'm like, well, there's these rope bridges. It must be over there. And I followed a whole bunch of those and I got to this guy he was a member of the Imperial Legion. This was a Legion quest I was on. And he had stripped off all of his armor. And I had passed by a spot and got to him, and he's like, and I basically had to escort him back to town. And coming back, I ran into a monster, and then just like behind a rock, there was this chest with a staff in it, a two-handed staff that was worth 10,000 gold.
Wow.
And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, I don't use the staff. I actually have kept it because of my Magicka thing, which again we'll get to, I guess. I really liked one of the main quest dungeons for the blades, where I had to do a trial where, in order to talk to the person who would test to see if I'm the Nerevarine, he's like, well, go to this dungeon and get my grandfather's bow or my father's bow or something like that. And so, of course, that was a really cool dungeon. Once I understood what was going on, it was a little bit like lost for a while. And that was the one where I discovered, oh no, this is a path that goes up. Like I had gone up to a level, and then it just continued going up, and there was like this spiral up to the top, which was pretty neat. Although difficult, that was one of the places where it was difficult to actually like, what is the path here? I can't miss the path because I'll fall, so I've got to try to get up over these little bumpy rocks. Just like fighting the physics system was really wild. So that was it was a cool dungeon. But there was some real jank in there.
Yeah.
But that was a neat thing. That was a pretty cool thing to do. And it felt good being like, yeah, I did it. I went in there and I fought that wraith and I got that bow and I came all the way back out, walked the whole thing in reverse to come back out, which is another thing that the company has gotten better at. The level design generally.
Yeah.
If you go all the way into a dungeon, there will be something that drops you back. You know, that it circles back on very near to the exit or the entrance or whatever. Or there'll be another exit. I mean, that's another thing that open world design does now. See it a lot in the Assassin's Creed that sometimes there are caverns you go into and it's like you're way deep in and you're like, oh man, I don't want to climb back out of this. And you'll get all the way down. And if you just keep pushing, there'll be another exit that'll take you on the other side of the mountain range or something like that. So there's a lot of that. And I could be using the fast travel stuff, the spells more.
Yeah, I definitely want to use those now, especially for what they're sending me on these days. So,
yeah. So those have been a couple things. I also found a glass dagger that was worth like, I don't know, 5,000, 8,000 gold. I found a glass shield that I think was 15 or 20.
Wow. Who do you sell the stuff to? Because people don't have. Feel like
if you go to Mournhold, which is the capital of Cyrodiil, remember I said it teleports you to the other continent?
Oh yeah, right.
Those people have money to burn, so actually take things over there, where I had been selling all that armor, all that Dark Brotherhood armor. That was a thing that I ended up doing. But they can only afford one piece at a time. So it's like, well, I guess I'll hold on to this until I come back here again later to resell it. Because those things don't refill automatically. So yeah, that's what I've been doing is, I guess I'll go starting to carry a lot of stuff. I got to fill up for my 460 pounds of carry weight. I got to,
oh my God.
My strength is 92. So
oh my goodness. Wow. Mine's wow. Okay. So that's like, I think I can carry like 100 or 280 or something. So
yeah, I'm at the point where I'm sort of slowly chipping my personality up like 1 or 2, because that's a Blades requirement, I think, to have your personality be 50 for the next level. So I'm like trying to slowly push that up. Like, so that's my strength could have already been maxed, but it's like not, there's no, at this point, the difference is pretty minimal. So, but it's very funny. I'm also carrying a second suit of heavy armor because I have better heavy armor than the Imperial Legions now. But if you want to talk to the Imperial Legion as a member, you have to be wearing the armor. They won't talk to you. They'll be like, I'm not going to talk to you until you're in uniform, and so
that's so funny. Those jerks.
I carry around.
Very elitist.
It's very funny to me, like the weird quirks of, those are the things that have really started to connect with me, is just this weird quirky stuff of like, I go to talk to this person, you won't talk to me because I'm not wearing the armor. I'm like, right, of course. And it's just the chest plate. Like, you don't have to have all the other stuff on. So I've sold a bunch of that stuff. But all of that is really funny to me. And, I don't know. I just run around just doing a ton of quests, because now it's like, I want to advance, get to the end of all those storylines, and then I'm just going to mop up the main quest and at some point. Yeah. So
do you have a concept of what even the main quest is? I mean, if you were to go,
it's the blades quest.
The blade stuff. Okay.
Yeah. And what that's going to lead us to, having done this first step of this sort of Nerevarine, is that you need to go talk to I think he's basically sending me around to talk to all the Ashlander tribes, the ones that are kind of broken away from the cities and are, living separate. And when you talk to them, there's a quest that takes you, and it's basically them to, determining whether you could be the Nerevarine. And they're like, well, I don't know. The future's uncertain. You could be. It's like, okay, I could be the chosen one. Oh, surprise. But that's that storyline. And I think that's the thing that's going to take you. They've already told me about the Ghost Wall, which I saw, by the way. Have you actually seen the Ghost Wall?
The Ghost Gate? Is it Ghost Gate or Ghost?
There is a ghost wall.
Oh, I don't. And then the Ghost Gate.
It's literally a wall. It's like a blue glowing, translucent wall. That's
no.
Through
it's marked on my map, but I haven't seen.
Oh, okay. Oh no, the Ghost Gate is probably the way through to get on the other side of the Ghost Wall. But there is literally a wall that is built.
Wow.
And it's got special, whatever support towers or whatever that are holding the whole thing up or something like that. When I ran into that kind of accidentally, I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know this was
wild.
Here. I mean, yeah, it was really neat finding that as well. So it's been a lot of stuff like that, just cool quirks.
Discovery. Yeah.
And being like, oh, that's neat. Like, it's like high fantasy stuff that feels like a homebrew campaign in that it's very offbeat and very specific and not at all generic. And I mean, the races are, and there's a lot of issues with that we've already talked about, but a lot of the world design and sort of where that quest is going to lead and everything feels like when I go through there, it feels like it's a big area. I mean, it's probably the whole center part of the map based on
it's Red Mountain, right?
Yeah. Right. And so it's like, how much stuff is in there? It, so I'm definitely, this is why I'm at 48 hours. And, after my time is, it's not increasing linearly. So I don't know where I'll be next week. So,
yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. My very short session compared to yours, was unfortunately dominated by, obviously, I'm still... So it's interesting to find out that skills are what drives your leveling up to your faction or the faction quests. So I'll have to look and see what that's all about. And because my impression was obviously wrong impression, but my impression was I was leveling up based on the kills that I was getting, because I'd go back to the main dude, he'd give me 2 more, I'd go off and kill them, come back, rinse and repeat. And so I did probably maybe 6 more, and it's usually 2 at a time, and they're in different places. So, but I guess what's really happening is I'm leveling up the things they need me to level up, and I just didn't realize it.
Yeah, because you're in that channel, right? You're doing that.
Yeah.
The same would be true for me of the Fighters Guild quests, I believe, right? Because that's for me axe and heavy armor.
Yeah,
I'm already. I mean, my heavy armor's pushing 90 and my axe is maxed already. And so then I just need a third skill that is like 20 or 25 or 30 or whatever those need to be. I don't even know what they are, but they have other things that they want. I'm sure blades, now that I've switched to those, is one of them. So I'm covered. Like the Fighters Guild, I'm never going to have a requirement, that I don't match. But the Mages Guild is a totally different ballgame.
Yeah. So I would say over half, if not maybe 2 of the 3 or 4 hours that I played was on one assassination.
Oof.
And I kind of,
you're used to that. You played Hitman.
Yeah, exactly. It is. Especially this one in particular felt a little Hitman because of what I had to do to actually succeed. So I did the second thing I've looked up with the game. Well, I guess if you count level cap, that's 3 things I've looked up. But I looked up the ship routes because I just didn't want to waste money not knowing where to go. I looked up the level cap, and then I had to look up this location of this dungeon because I just could not. So they sent me off to Dagon Fell, which is an island, a smaller island up in the north, which you probably have been to or may have been to. And the cool thing about the Morag Tong stuff is that I think we've talked about it before, but I love how they usually have one hit that is in the city, in Vivek City, and then one that is out in the middle of nowhere. so there's sort of like a combo there. And so this one sent me up there, and I kind of I loved when you get there and you kind of talk to people about Dagon Fell, and they're kind of talking to you about, you get there and there's a bunch of Nords, and is that the race they call
yes,
the Nords? Yeah. So
that's Skyrim's people.
People, and they kind of talk about how Dagon Fell used to be a Nordic town, and then when the Dunmer came, they kicked them out, and then, although before that it was the Dwemer were there, and then since the Imperial, since the Vardenfell had become part of the Imperial, land, then I guess and the Ashlanders have left or whatever, that the Nords are coming back. So it was kind of neat to like, there's and in the town there's actually multiple types of architecture too. So you see some dwarven ruins kind of in and amongst the town. You see like the newer Nordic stuff, and then you see some like Dunmer stuff, So it actually was like, it showed this layer of history like a lot of cities have, and this isn't a city, it's a small town, but you know what I mean? It's like you see the layers of it. And so, and the writing, when you talk to the townsfolk, was also reflecting that. So I thought that was cool. But anyway, I ended up having to scour that whole island for this one dungeon, finding, like I said earlier, all the dungeons I didn't want to find, that I wasn't looking for. And that took me, so it was kind of, I didn't want to look it up too quickly because I kind of wanted to see how, what that process was like to find a needle in a haystack. And so that was frustrating, and the directions basically were too vague. And then when I looked it up, it sounds like pretty much everyone has trouble finding this place because it's pretty like tucked away. Anyway, and then once I got in there, as usual, like the everything inside was not way harder, but harder than I should have been going for, because my whole theme with the Moray Tong is that I'm refusing to do other things. I'm trying to just like beeline my way through this. And so I think I'm always a little under-leveled. So I kind of have to cheese my way through it some. So I basically, it was very Hitman-like because I'm using the level design and the AI to my advantage, right? To try to basically kite them through the hallways while I back up and shoot arrows at them very slowly, and then kind of running around a table while skeletons attacking, chasing me, and so just out of reach so it can't get to me, and so it ends up being kind of a fun, janky, weird assassination by the end, but the point of the story is that it's such a commitment, I guess I'll say, or such a like a elaborate process to take down this one, assassination, that when I get back to the Moray Tong and I could talk to the head dude, it feels like I'm like a badass assassin. I'm like, I did it. I went to the top of the world, top of this world at least, scoured this island, went inside where I wasn't supposed to be, snuck around, found this guy, and then all this stuff happened, and then eventually I got him down, and it feels like, I did it.
Yeah, I felt much the same way when I took out the leader of the Dark Brotherhood, that had this, or whatever, I don't know if it's the overall leader, but the person who had the contract on me. And because I had gone there once. Yeah, I had gotten there once, and you remember I said my hireling couldn't get in. And
yeah.
I finally figured out another way into that space and got him in there with me. He didn't make it out. Like, I don't know where he is now, but he did. Coming back out, he got lost. He got stuck somewhere. Because I got back to town, I was like, oh, cool. And I bought some armor, and I turned around to give him the armor, which is a funny thing, is when you sell armor to people, if it's better than what they have, they'll just put it on. So like, you'll be talking to a vendor and you sell them a bunch of, Dark Brotherhood stuff, and you come out of the menu.
Oh, that's why that's happening.
Yeah, and he's got all this Dark Brotherhood stuff on, and you're like, okay. I guess that's what you're like now.
Dude, do you know what that is? Like, I don't think you should be wearing that.
Because it's not really a good look for you. One of my Fighters Guild contacts is like half Dark Brotherhood gear right now, and it's very creepy because the mask is super weird.
Yeah.
It's like it looks kind of like the Gimp suit in Pulp Fiction or something.
Yeah,
like that.
it's very. It's like it's kind of a steampunky product.
Yeah,
it's got some lenses and things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very strange. So it's really weird to talk to him. I don't like it, but yeah, that's a funny thing. But yeah, I'd gone and tried to get to those, and there were just like 3. I couldn't take 3 of them on at once, and that's why I had the second guy, and finally got him through. And between the two of us, it took me like 4 or 5 tries. The guy, if he got through a thing that knocked me down, it could go pretty badly pretty fast because he just wails on you while you're on the ground. And so if I got staggered like that, I got in trouble. So I've been very more careful with my fatigue management when I'm actually going, because I run everywhere. So I'm normally got no stamina left, and I've got to kind of remember, I should probably fortify that before I go into this fight or restore it.
Right. Yeah. The potions. Oh man.
I have so many potions.
Yeah, and it's hard to I guess maybe I don't know if I'm not using them right, but it's just so hard to sort through them, and I just wish that their icons were clearer or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you got to sort of mouse over them individually.
Yeah.
What I end up doing is basically remembering, like, okay, the thing that I want, I have like a high single digit amount of them.
Yeah.
Like I'm just literally remembering basically the rough numbers of things that I have that are important. Because I've got all these potions that I'm never going to use, for sure. Like I have all these restore whatever potions, but almost every time I lose stats, it's because I've been blighted or poisoned or diseased. I have potions for those, so that you take that and it just restores all those stats. I don't know what else would take those things away.
Well, I've met some necromancers. I assume you've met those guys that summon those fleshy beasts, and they just drain.
Do they drain?
They
stuff?
just drain your stats. Like, I don't. Maybe it is a disease I didn't notice, but I think they're just draining your stats, and so you get encumbered, and then you're basically done for.
Yeah. Well, so the thing with those is that if it's because of poison or disease, it'll actually tell you. It'll say in the space below, you have been poisoned, or you have contracted.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen that a couple times.
Lock joint or something, or whatever. There's different names of them. It's very funny. It's like I have no idea what that means other than now.
Yeah, it's so crazy. They have their own set of diseases, as well in this game.
Well, D&D has that, right? There's, you may not know that, but there are
different types. I guess there's
the DM's guide has in 3rd edition anyway. There's like a dozen different common diseases, that you can just pick up from rats and stuff. I'm always rolling that stuff against you guys, or you're rolling against me anyway.
Well, there's, I do feel like, speaking of D&D, like I do feel like you can see the influences better here than maybe in Daggerfall, but this is like an above ground Underdark. Really?
Yeah.
Right. Their influence for the Dunmer and all, obviously, is the drow and the mushrooms, right? And like the kind of tone and everything feels very, even though it's an island, it does feel very, very much like the Underdark.
Yeah. It's still an isolated, cut off from the rest of everything kind of community and everything in that sense. Only recently having contact with the Empire, I guess. Which is its own thing for sure. But you can see all that for sure. Let me tell you about how I got my Magicka back.
Oh yeah. So what was up with that? Have you figured it out?
Well, I didn't figure it out. I looked it up because I was like, I need to know where to buy these potions. I'm tired of looking for them. So I'm just going to look up where to buy potions. And in some thread, somebody's like, well, you could buy potions at such and such, and they replenish, if you leave the shop and go back in. I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun. And then somebody in the thread says, well, if you're a battle mage, then the common way to do it is to summon an ancestral ghost.
What?
Well, that's one of my spells I get at the beginning, is I can summon a ghost, right? And it's a lot of mana, especially when early on, so I almost never did it. But I have conjuring, and one of the things I can conjure a dagger, in my hand, and I can conjure this ghost that will fight for me. And I used that a lot, actually, in the early levels, even though it took a lot of mana. Because I thought, just every time I go into the Mages Guild, they'll have potions for me. That has not been so.
Yeah.
So, turns out, I can absorb Magicka if I'm attacked with a spell.
Oh.
Which is one of the benefits of this sign.
Okay.
So the thing that you do is you make sure your mana never gets too low, your Magicka never gets too low, that you can't cast Summon Ancestral Ghost.
Okay.
And then you whack it with one of your weaker items a few times to aggro it to you. And then the first thing it does is cast a fire spell on you. And that recharges your Magicka.
Oh my goodness, are you serious?
I was reading this, I'm like, and it must be intended, because this is a game that had patches and DLC and expansions. They weren't DLC at the time, but expansions. And so they knew, right? I mean, this was, it has to be planned.
I mean, I can see the balancing of like enemies, getting mana back from enemy spells.
Well,
aggroing your own ghost.
There were times where I'd be like, wait a minute, my Magicka's up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, what happened? Like,
right.
Is there just a bug where sometimes I accidentally get Magicka and I'm not supposed to?
So you just,
I was not connecting it.
Basically? You take damage and you get Magicka.
You don't even take damage if you absorb it.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
It's very powerful. I mean, I'm taking normal damage. Well, not a ton of damage anymore with my heavy armor at whatever 90. But as long as I have armor, I did that dungeon that I was like, it was pretty cool, where I killed the Wraith. Almost all my armor got broken to the point where it was unusable.
In the one dungeon?
In the one dungeon.
Wow.
Yeah, and I get up to the top and I'm like, I've got like a couple of pauldrons and one of my gloves or whatever, and everything else is broken. So I'm like, my unarmed is going up, or my unarmored is going up while I'm up there. It was very entertaining. So yeah, it's been
wild. Well, that's big. That's huge for you then to figure that out.
Oh yeah, I mean, now I just walk around because my alteration is my best magic school. I'm just walking around casting shield on myself again and again and again, or water walking sometimes, because I've got to get places on water. And I'm just kind of casting and just keeping an eye on where my Magicka is, and then I'll just stop on the road every now and again, summon a ghost, whack it a few times, have it heal back my Magicka, and then kill it, and then move on. It is extremely silly.
That's so funny. Wow.
It was really hilarious.
I mean, I feel like that's a good example, though, of like how people, like, I mean, you say it's intended because they didn't patch it out, but I mean, in a way, they couldn't really patch it out because it's so systemic.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they had changed that, it would have been
weird.
It would have been the sort of thing where it's like your summons magic doesn't, get
It's
absorbed.
arbitrary, kind of an arbitrary fix. But I feel like it's like it goes back to the original point we were making at the beginning of the episode of like, what makes this game feel different from other ones? And it's like, and people probably love that they figured that out, right? And that it is such a systemic game that there's all sorts of weird interactions with things that they just kind of went heavy into systems and then kind of crossed their fingers in a way.
Right.
They made
huge functions and whatever. Yeah. There's equations for everything, and the equations get weird whenever numbers are big, right? I mean, if they're not purely linear, if there's anything that has like any kind of exponent or anything like that, it's like, well, it looks pretty good up till you get to the numbers around 80, and then woo, it just goes up. Like if you've been looking at I don't know, certain health stats in America over the last couple of years, you see that happening, right? It's like, everything's pretty linear for a while. It looks kind of like a line, and then suddenly it's a line, moving up instead of sideways.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those, math effects. It's like, if the number's small, it kind of looks like a line, and then it sure doesn't look like a line anymore. So, it's just that sort of thing. It's like, well, if you go and push everything to 100, then you'll be godlike out there.
Right.
So that's been really cool.
Yeah, and I guess it's just sort of like the other side of it is just the emergence of that too, right? Where there's all these systems that clash together, and we can maybe talk about it next time, but the various versions of crafting that they have, and sort of like the fact that you, like, I don't know if this is in the other games, maybe it is, but the fact that you can make, because they've broken everything down into the sort of raw materials, so to speak, you can kind of choose what, like, I'm finding magic items and magic weapons and stuff, but it's like I know that there's, hypothetically, I could make a specific kind of dagger that does a certain thing that I want to do based on my play style, and there's nothing kind of stopping me from doing that. It's just crazy.
Those systems are still present.
Are they?
Because it's something that people don't want the company to take out.
Interesting.
Right? I mean, so I believe the enchanting stuff is all there. I'm sure it's been tweaked, and I know there are things that have been taken out, but they're not huge systems like that. So alchemy is certainly still a thing. I did a ton of eating flowers and mushrooms and bees and whatever while I walked around in Skyrim. And you just slowly, your alchemy would go up, and you'd learn more about all of these different ingredients. And if you want, and I don't think I actually ever engaged in the crafting aspect. I was just like, I'd be like, "Oh, cool, a bee. Let me eat it and see what it does." And and et cetera, and same thing with, the enchanting is the one that I've never got into. And I know that's the really potentially game breaking stuff of just like, I'm going to make this sword that has this enchantment on it that, does this specific effect because I have this spell. And you just like, oh, I know about this and I know about that. And suddenly you've got this God Slayer thing, and you're just like, okay, that's me now.
Yeah. I luckily, I think it was my first Morrowind kill. That was that really hard one that I completely cheesed. Dropped a dagger that I still use today that's like worth 4,100 or something, and I was pretty early on when I got it, and it does like a extra cold damage or something, and then every time they've done this probably on purpose, but every kill has something pretty good on it, on the body, and I found a dagger that just levitates, like it lets you levitate, and it's nice. And it's just like it's just crazy that it's so flexible, but that's
JRPG stuff right there.
Pretty neat. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's
actually that dungeon I mentioned with that's on the main quest. I actually needed the spell from the dude who fell out of the sky to get across a gap.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think that was there on purpose. I mean, you could probably levitate, but I couldn't. There was a pool of water, so I could have like water walked across the pool of water, but it was too high to get up. Like I couldn't have jumped up onto that space.
Yeah.
And from the other side, but I think they take into things like you're carrying a bunch of stuff. I'm in heavy armor, so maybe somebody in light armor could have just jumped over that. I wasn't going to take everything off because I still would have been carrying it. I'm sure they were like, well, you weigh this much, you can't jump that.
There is a jump spell too.
And there's stuff like that, I'm sure. Yeah. But I used that acrobatics thing. My acrobatics went to 1,000 with that spell. And so I actually jumped and I basically hit the ceiling, and I'm like hanging on the ceiling because I think the way the jump works is like you just move up. You're basically moving up, and a collision doesn't halt your momentum. It sort of just like bleeds your momentum. Yeah. So I'm like just hanging on the ceiling for a while, and I'm like looking down and trying to make sure that when I finally fall, I'm going to fall onto the rock that I want to be on. So it's a whole thing.
Wow. That's crazy.
And this is the stuff people love.
What a weird, it's such a weird game. Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's where we are in the two different games we're playing.
Yep. I am. Let's see. Valestra the Thinker right now is my title. Which I don't know why a Assassin's Guild would have a rank of the Thinker, but yeah, I don't know. It's cool.
You sure you're not the Tinker? Were you soldier, sailor? Before that?
Nice. There you go. Yep. Nope. I did a double take. Thought it maybe was Tinker too, but no, it's I don't know. They have, the Black Glove, as they call themselves, they have a theology about them, I guess, or whatever. So yeah,
Nice.
it's cool. I mean, I do love that we're playing so different. The games are so different, and I do love that I have taken on this, and it basically sounds like there's basically a faction for every, class, if you will, or something. But maybe it's not that robust, but I love that there is.
I don't think it's that much. I mean, I think we're covering, well, I'm covering
everything else.
At least 4, and I've got the temple. The only one we don't have covered is the Thieves Guild, which I think is another
whole thing. Yeah. And isn't one of the games like you could, I don't know if it's this one, but you can join the Dark Brotherhood, right? Isn't there?
Oh yeah, Oblivion and Skyrim both have Dark Brotherhood quest lines.
That bad, yeah. And I've always heard good things about that. But I just love that I can, that it's supporting what I want to do, in this weird world.
The temple one is the one that you can be a pilgrim, and your goal, like one of your first quests, is to go. I haven't started this. I don't think I became a member. It's weird, like it's on my list, but I don't think I paid the dues, so I haven't even really officially joined, but now it's on my list of possibles. And I think one of the first things they'll have you do is go around and visit the 7 major shrine artifact things in the world, which is a thing that I remember back in the day we talked about, that Reed said, yeah, you could go be a pilgrim and nonviolent in this game. And that's your...
that's pretty good. Yeah. Maybe after I attain
maybe you'll
rank,
atone.
I will atone, and I will go the opposite direction. That sounds really
become
cool.
a cleric. Yeah.
Have you found any like weird sort of temples with pylons that are like glowing and they require specific indexes? Have you?
No.
Okay, I found this it was on that island, Dagenfell. I found this building. You go inside and there's these 2 pylons and they have names, and you go up and you interact with them. And they have like swirling red energy around them, and it says you do not have the right index for this. Speaking of Halo, this you don't have the right index for this pylon. So I was just wondering what that was all about. But
now I'm like, is this the guy I am now? Am I the guy who needs to go figure out what's the deal with these pylons? I have to go back there. I have a dangling Mages Guild quest
on Dagenfell.
Yeah, that's where I had the necromancer that I went in, and at a certain point was like, oh, I can't get past all of this stuff. Now I totally could, so I may have to go back there now. I won't have the whatever indexes. That might end up being part of the main quest.
Yeah,
like,
I was wondering.
Is like it sort of feels like it. It's like, oh, you need to have this.
It felt significant.
Yeah. That's interesting. Or it could be from one of the main. I think one of the expansion packs was the werewolves with this one, and the other one is Tribunal, which I think is the Imperial Legion stuff. Maybe, I don't know. That feels very integrated, though. I think there's something with it. I don't know if it's a whole quest line or whatever. Like it's kind of hard to know. It's kind of talking out of nowhere at this point, but I'm sure folks know. Maybe somebody can let us know how that stuff came about. It's out there, but I'm trying to not look up. I'm trying to look up as little as I can, but yeah. I was just at I was at the point where it's like I can't level in mages without Magicka, so I need to find a source of Magicka.
you needed to figure that out.
I needed something, and I had not worked out what was causing me to occasionally gain Magicka. So
that's so funny. Wow,
that was such a weird. I was like, "Are you kidding?" I was like, "This can't really be." These people are trolling me. I was just like,
that's pretty clever.
This is a troll forum post. Like this can't be right. But it was. So
I feel like your character is quite specced out to be godlike by the end. Like the fact that you're, especially when you get your magic up and then you're absorbing magic to your Magicka by people firing stuff at you. Like that seems like crazy.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to level up my destruction. Oh, that's another thing. So the Mages Guilds, I knew that there was supposed to be one in Ebonheart, I believe. I think it was Ebonheart. So I'm in Ebonheart, and I'm like, I walked through the building a billion times. I'm like, there's no Mages. I found the Fighters Guild. There's no Mages Guild here. And I'm like, this is the weirdest thing. I mean, is it out? And there's not much of a town. There's really no other place it could be other than in this sort of castle building. So I go off and I go and I play another 10 hours and I'm in a Mage's Guild and I'm using the teleporting to get around the guild guides. And I go and I sometimes, but it had been a while, and I go use a guild guide and they're like, Wolverton Hall, Ebonheart. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. Oh no, it's not Ebonheart. It's like Sadder Morith or something like that. Something like that. Something along those lines. Anyway, it's in this town. And I'm like, that's weird. And I go, so of course I go there immediately. I'm going to just drop this other thing I'm doing because I can get into this Mage's Guild. It's the only way in.
Oh, nice. I thought that's what you were going to say. Yeah, that's brilliant.
You can leave. There's a door to leave and be in that hall, but you can't, there's no door back in. It's a one-way door.
Just like mages to do that.
Yeah, it is. It was a very good moment when I was like, are you kidding me? Like this thing I walked around that building for half an hour just like,
that's what the mages want you to do.
Exactly. It's very convoluted. Like I'm looking at the local map and they're not really good at 3D in depth, in Z. So it's like things are right on top of each other. And so it's like, it must be here. And I'm just haven't really covered the whole space, but the fourth time I covered the whole space, I'm like, Big Ben kids Parliament. And, I'm just, that's a National Lampoon's European Vacation reference for those who haven't been alive since like 1988 or whatever that came out. Anyway, I finally was going a little nutty and like, okay, well, I'm just leaving here now. And then turns out there's a way to get to it. You got to get to it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Very good.
Smiling big right now because that's a clever.
It's very good. It's very good. And that's where the alteration teacher was, who leveled me up to 59. So
oh, yeah. So even more.
That's why I had to get there. Mm-hmm. I was like, I got to get in, because nobody else would teach it. Nobody else that I found was training that. So, all right. Well, let's move on to, I have a review. We have a singing review. I'm sorry, Mystery. I'm going to get to it. I'm particularly tired today.
Yeah.
And my voice is a little raw.
We're busy.
Yep. But busy playing Morrowind.
Yeah, take a couple of those hours off of the.
I know, and train my voice. Drink some honey and lemon. We have a review here that's informative, fun from Zeriquin. It could be either. And it says, the Elder Scrolls Morrowind discussions have really made me want to go back and play the game. Such a fun and informative podcast. I look forward to new episodes as well as the backlog I have to catch up on. Yeah, you've got nearly 300 episodes to catch up on there, Zeriquin, and thank you for the review. We definitely appreciate it. And next time maybe the singing review. We'll see. I'm not committing to anything, but soon and for the rest of your life. Let's turn to email. Why don't you hit one? Maybe we'll do two because we got to give you a few minutes buffer.
Yeah, give me a little bit of buffer. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll do two. Sounds good. Okay, so
one each.
Subject is Morrowind from Mr. Dan Hunter. Hi there, Brent and Tim. A crash of thunder and the heavens open up. Waterfalls from the sky in sheets as I walk the road to Caldera in search of enemy agents. Caldera. This is the second time
potato.
Yeah, this is the second time I've made this journey. The first time I'd spotted the chimney stacks of Caldera in the distance and dashed toward the safety of the town. Warnings of the dangers of traveling the roads by foot ringing in my ears. I should have listened to those two wise men. I was attacked from behind, spinning around with my endurance levels low from too much sprinting. I unsheathed my axe to come face to face with a massive jaw on legs. 2 swipes later, and my corpse fell to the ground. My life blood being washed away like tears from a dragon in the rain. What am I reading here?
Yep.
Thank you for finally encouraging me to install Morrowind. Okay, we're back on track. A game that sat on my shelves collecting dust for an age. I've played Skyrim and the Fallout, spent time at Kaer Morhen, but Morrowind is different. Kaer Morhen is Witcher, by the way.
No, thank you.
I thought you might not know.
Yeah, I did not.
It feels like a proper tabletop role-playing game. I haven't made notes playing an RPG since the days of Eye of the Beholder. Yeah, Eye of the Beholder call out. It feels so open world in a way that most open world games don't. In recent memory, there's always been a pointer showing me the most direct route, or the UI signposting the way. In Morrowind, I have to ask the NPCs which direction is Caldera and then follow actual road signposts. I normally speak to everyone and queue up side quests. However, due to the nature of the journal interface on my own notes, that's not an option. So I'm forced to focus on the task at hand. The world looks a little janky, however. I love the interesting world design. It's unique. I miss a proper paper manual and need to trawl through the contents of the DVD to see if there is one, which there is, by the way. If you DVD, maybe not, but Steam has one. Always keep up the good work, Dan Hunter Guernsey. Wow, call out to Eye of the Beholder. He also talks about leading by the nose design, which we talked about in this episode. So you're way ahead of us, Dan. And yeah, he knows his open world game. So it's really, I'm glad he's playing. That was a great little story there.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like, I don't know if it was this, it's probably not this game, because you can't set a current quest or current target, but maybe it's Oblivion, but in Oblivion, there's a spell, and it's in Skyrim as well, which is why I know, but I think it starts in Oblivion. There's a spell that you can cast that will give you a path, that will use the pathing system that the AI uses to get you to your destination. Rather than, so it's a spell, and it's a pretty high level spell, as I recall. It might be like illusion magic. And it basically guides you to where you need to go. Which is pretty wild. They it's another thing to do is like leverage a system that you have and make something in game out of it, like something else in game, I should say, because of course the AI are using that thing already. But yeah, it's very cool. Thanks for your adventures, Dan, and our man in Guernsey. All right, I have one here that's got some questions in it, so a good one to give us a couple things to talk about. The subject is reusing art and audio assets, and it's from Logan. Hi, Brett and Tim. Your recent discussion about Halo Infinite and Morrowind reminded me of a question I've had for a while. Why don't modern franchises more frequently reuse assets from prior installments? In prior console generations, it made sense that every new game in a franchise required made-from-scratch assets. Each new console represented an advancement in tech and a visual upgrade was the best way to convince consumers that they were getting something newer and better. So 8-bit Mario is out, 16-bit Mario is in. But as new games seem to be achieving diminishing returns with visual fidelity, at least I can't tell much of a difference the last couple console generations, this start-from-scratch mentality for art assets seems to remain. I know I'm grossly oversimplifying. That's just my impression from playing many games and talking with some developers. I'm sure some under-the-hood components get reused, pathing AI, character skeletons, etc., and considering the thousands of assets in most AAA games, there's probably some holdovers. But after so many different takes on the Halo grunt, do we need to redesign the grunt again? Have we not reached peak grunt? Heck, given the thousands of NPC chatterlines BioWare and Bethesda have at this point, they could probably sit out recording new ones for the next game and we'd never notice. I'm curious to hear your overall discussion about how these decisions get made, but I guess my main questions are, when making a game sequel, how much of a prior game's assets or code can be reused? How much could technically be reused, but is put aside for other non-technical reasons? And what are the biggest non-technical reasons for ditching prior assets? I expect shifts in art style and tone might be common reasons. Personally, I can still remember the days of expansion packs and wouldn't mind reusing the tech assets if it meant more refined gameplay. Maybe I'm in the minority, though. Maybe marketing games is still largely about showing off graphical improvements, so the team feels compelled to show something new. Just please tell me some poor soul isn't redesigning the office chairs every new Call of Duty. Best, Logan. Well, I can't speak to Call of Duty. Do you have thoughts, sir? I certainly have thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, unfortunately, anything, and for me, it's not a simple. There's not a simple answer here because it really heavily depends on the goals of the game and the sequel. For a blanket statement that I will say is that if you're planning appropriately and things go well, which they don't always go well, part of the point of the sequel is to reuse things. I mean, it's to like you've the blood, sweat, and tears to get the first one out is a thing, and then you want to iterate on that. So, if the generation gap isn't huge, then you definitely should. And I think if you look at Bungie's Halos, specifically, 1, 2, and 3, you would see that happening. There was a generation transition in there, but there's still fundamentals that were kept for sure. And in fact, there's big portions of the engine 343 uses today that is from those original games. Something like, I mean, it's funny he brings up the grunt because it actually was an example internally that would always come up of like, how much are we going to change the grunt? Sort of, it even became a bit of a joke. But what I will say, without getting into too much detail, because I actually technically wasn't on Halo 4, but when 343 took over, there was a big generation change there, and also a new studio, right? So I think to some degree, there's sometimes the goal is let's put our stamp, I guess, if you will, like let's stay true to the spirit of what we're doing, but we also want to modernize and kind of put our own spin on things. And so that's that can be essentially goes back to my original point. The goal, what's the goal that you're trying to achieve? And sometimes there is a more kind of marketable way to do that because you want it to feel different, right? With Infinite, the goal very much was returning to the classics, right? So then you're shifting kind of away from the previous grunt and going back to, okay, what does a modern version of Halo 1's grunt look like, right? So then you kind of have to make a new grunt at that point. But from Infinite's perspective, I would assume, I don't know this to be true, but I would assume, for the foreseeable future, that will be the grunt that will be used. Maybe up-resed over time, but generally they're not going to remake the grunt, or, the Warthog's the other example we would always talk about, like, how much do you need to change the Warthog, so.
Right. You're getting closer and closer to the original idea, right? I mean, it's a big deal to go from 1 to 5, but once you're at 5, you've pretty much got your Warthog. Like, this is what the Warthog was meant to be, right? In terms of fidelity and things like that, and all the moving parts or what have you. I mean, I think probably certainly more code than you realize is reused. That's probably, it's the least obvious. It's nobody's picking apart that, but I want to point out a particular game that's just come out, and that's Horizon Forbidden West, I believe it's the title. And Zero Dawn, like, there was actually a whole thing on Twitter, I don't know, a month ago, where somebody was comparing the animations on Aloy from, the first to the second, and they were clearly the same animations. And, it was a sort of lazy devs kind of comment that, of course, every developer I know was out there saying, oh, give me a break. Like, but the thing is that that's part of the character. Yeah. Like, why would you redo that? Like, that character does those things. I mean, years and years ago, I actually wrote a blog post where it was like, I think there should be studios who develop digital actors. And I'll talk about why this would be difficult, but like digital actors who literally are like actors, in the sense, like, this is a character that we maintain and you license for use in your game. So it's like you're looking for the Tom Cruise character. We have one of those, and that Tom Cruise character be in your game. We'll re-rig him for your specific needs, but like, we maintain him as talent. And that would be a sort of outsourcing approach that you could use, is like, no, we provide actors who fit the roles that you have. Like, and you can do makeup on them, right? They could look a little different, but they would not, but they would be fundamentally the same guy, which, I don't know, game developers probably don't want to do because most of our guys are the same guy. But
so you support our AI overlords taking over the world, then, is what I'm hearing.
No, I'm not saying that at all. But you could have that guy and your Robert Mitchum character, who's just like the, kind of, how would they describe him? Anyway, your trench coat wearing guy,
Yeah.
But anyway, but to have a
funny.
digital character, because why not, right? I mean, and that those people would actually, that house, my thinking would be like, they have a stable of actors and like they want to protect the view, what that character is, and then like the same way an actor's agents would probably want to do. But anyway,
I see where you're going. I got it. Perfect. Okay, so what you were ahead of the game on is you had thought of the concept of an NFT for characters before NFTs.
Oh no,
I got you.
That is not it at all. No, that is not it at all. Not even remotely. Oh my God, no. Anyway, so, I mean, one of the things that makes things difficult to reuse is because, like Tim was saying, those goals change and like you need more expressivity from the face, for example. And it's like, well, now we got to re-rig the head. We can spend more bones there. But of course, that means we got to take something from somewhere else. And like, I mean, things like that happen. But I think there's a lot of stuff that, could be reused, probably is reused or just retooled a little bit, I remember playing RE7. I streamed that game, and I think at some point I literally said, like, I hope they're just like, this is all off the shelf assets, because why would you spend all this time to make this grimy version of a lawnmower or a bike or whatever?
Yeah, especially if you're doing photorealism for real, like modern day. Exactly. Yeah, you definitely that is a waste of resources if you're just making another chair. If you can.
I would hope that people have big asset libraries that they can draw from. I mean, audio folks. We talked to Dave last year? And
audio does this a lot.
Audio does a ton of reuse, and you'll never notice because it'll be in a different mix, right? But he's always talking on his Twitter, about things. It's like, oh yeah, this thing from Republic Commando showed up in this episode of the Clone Wars, or whatever else he's working on these days, and those things are still getting new life, and so that happens. But the biggest non-technical reasons are demands of the market, or marketing. Honestly, just shift. And a lot of studios don't do the same game over and over and over again, and they can't really. But you better believe that when those games start and they're in development, oh yeah, that's your last character's run cycle you're using while you're prototyping that game, because why would you spend the time to develop something and as you're still developing the characters and what have you. So we do reuse, and sometimes we have to ditch stuff because it doesn't fit with the new character. You couldn't just use Nathan Drake's animations on Joel in Last of Us, right? It just wouldn't work. Because the characters are very different, even though rigging wise they're probably fairly similar. But Joel and Nathan probably have different actual needs, right? So those things.
Oh, for sure. The tonal direction is very different for those two. Yeah, and I mean, again, with the goals, like there's creative intent is often a big driver of this too. And if it makes sense, you do have to balance the risk reward, the bang for buck, all of that, right? But to your point about like the Warthog, like because of the goals of Infinite specifically, of kind of returning to the classic feel, if you do a side by side of Chief between 5 and Infinite or the Warthog, there is very intentionally a difference there, because there was actually a simplification in a way, right?
Interesting.
Still needed to look next gen and cool, but it's actually like, because by the time we got to 5, things had gotten a little gribbly and noisy, and kind of like overly, so it's interesting, right? Because again, the creative goals were different. Right. And it was like a return to sort of nostalgia, if you will.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, it's. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's very project specific. But I agree with him that there should be responsibility should be used by developers. in do you really need to remake this thing? You know, so.
And I would actually say that if you are outsourcing, you probably are reusing assets to some degree, because those houses are going to like start from something they have, and customize that thing. Like they're going to take that office chair and they're going to be like, you know what, slap a new texture on it, we're done. Because that's really all it requires. Unless the art direction is very, very different, so they're probably not going to remodel the whole thing from scratch, because they got to make money too. All right, I've left you very little buffer, so I'm going to rip through the rest of the stuff. Sorry. Our review came in through the Apple Store. We love the reviews. We love to read them on the show. Thank you for sending that in. Zeri Quinton. And of course, email at devgameclub@gmail.com. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com, on Twitter at devgameclub, where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
He is going to be streaming in like 4 minutes on twitch.tv/Tim Longo Jr., where he's playing Resident Evil 8. And he has now passed me by in that. It's fine. I'm way ahead in Morrowind. So, yeah. But you'll be going on to something new, so I actually probably won't be watching, because I do want to play that game. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo is by Mark Garcia. Have fun playing your own version of Morrowind this week, and good night.
Good night.